This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Hustler and Remis with you for the next couple of hours, and really looking forward to this program. I'm looking forward to Thursday night. Bombers and Alouettes, blue and gold, looking to get to 10-0. And who better to talk about the undefeated class of the Canadian Football League than TSN's and Blue Bomber legend Milt Stegall. The Turtle Man's going to join us coming up a little bit later on. And then we'll also break down a little bit more on the Jets off season, some hockey news and notes, a little Bombers, as well as Jays with Mike McIntyre, who was along with probably hundreds or thousands of you in Southern Manitobans watching the Jays and the Twins in at Target Field over the course of this weekend. We will get to our horse picks a little later on. We've got some Coolbet lines to get to on some action this evening. And by the way, just quickly speaking of Coolbet, a lot of people wondering what's up with the lock shop this week. Yes, I have gone 4 straight weeks picking the winner on the PGA Tour. The picks are in. The picks are out. Wherever you're getting this podcast, search Lock Shop, subscribe to it, or check my Twitter feed or Dustin Nielsen's for the video episode. Hit some CFL this week, PGA, and a little bit of baseball for tonight as well. But as far as we're going, we'll talk some Bombers, we'll talk Jets, some interesting news in and around the National Hockey League involving a former Winnipeg Jet we'll touch on. But before that, a big thank you to the sponsors that make this program happen each and every day. Special thanks to our friends at Aikens Lake, who took such amazing care of us over the last few days over the weekend. Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Vita Health, Culligan Water, Canadian Club, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend, Not Auto Corp, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Assiniboia Downs, and of course our friends over at Coolbet Canada. Let's get to it and welcome in the brains of the operation, Michael Remis. Remo, what is going on?
Wow, brains of the operation. That's quite a compliment.
My nose is growing right now.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's wow, I'm flattered. Nice to be here. What a beautiful day it is outside, and counting down to the, Thursday, Bombers, Als. But I'm looking forward to having Milt Stegall on. We actually have had some hockey news here the last couple of days. This is a good time.
Yeah, no doubt. And by the way, and I know I mentioned this yesterday, but I went through some messages and whatnot that I did not see when I was off the grid. A lot of props for you holding it down the way you were able to host and have fun with everyone over Thursday and Friday. So great job on that. The station's still there. Numbers were strong. People were here for us on Monday, and this should be a great show today with the two of us here for it. Now, we will get to some Bomber talk. Of course, we're going to break that down with Milt Stegall. Not a whole lot happening on the Jets scene today, but tomorrow we're going to have a special guest from the Winnipeg Jets, Remo, and that is the newly married and newly signed to a 3-year deal, the pride of Green Bay, Wisconsin, Mason Appleton, coming up on the program. It'd be great to catch up with him. He has had quite the last few weeks, to say the least.
Last few weeks, it's been quite a year because we had him on last year after he was selected by Seattle in the expansion draft. I don't know if anyone remembers the show where him and Gary came in at the same time. We had to bump Gary for Mason Appleton. Yeah, I mean, he had a tough year in Seattle. I think he struggled getting to the lineup, 17 points in 49 games, was reacquired by the Jets. But since then, seems to have found a home here. got married. We showed the picture on Friday's show. And now he signed a 3-year contract for $2.167 million AAV, $6.5 million total. We talked about it quite a bit yesterday, but looking forward to chatting with Mason. And I wonder if what kind of conversations he's had with Rick Bowness and the new coaching staff. What kind of role we're going to see him on the team this year. Will he be a third line role? I would think maybe him and Adam Lowry, possibly Morgan Barron, or a new acquisition. We'll have to see, if the team is they're not done yet, adding to the roster. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. Maybe we can talk about the Packers as well. We usually touch on them and his golf game.
I'm wondering whether his wife is a cheesehead.
Yeah.
Like, I have as I said, I didn't even see that photo, so I don't know a lot about, whether this was, a longtime girlfriend back from, where he's from, or whether it was from school or not. But I always love, especially when people have such hardcore allegiances to a team, when they're entering into the nuptials, whether their partner is all in on that, or the best is when you have like a Viking fan and a Packer fan get married, or like an Oiler fan and a Calgary fan. And we did see a lot of that fun stuff in and around the Battle of Alberta this year. But anyways, Mason Appleton on tomorrow's show. And we will also have one of the greatest players in offensive line history in the Canadian Football League, the man himself, Stanley Bryant, coming on the show tomorrow. That is going to be a lot of fun. And of course, Stanley will fill us in on preparations for the squad heading into Thursday night's game. Now, we will talk Bombers coming up with Milt in a few minutes. But Remo, let's get to a little bit of this news in the National Hockey League. And a big day for former Winnipeg Jet Jacob Trouba, announced this morning as the new captain of the New York Rangers.
Yeah, it's a big announcement when Kevin Weeks has the report last night showing off his Rangers jersey. I think this was a bit of a surprise. We knew that last year they didn't have a captain, Gallant going with all assistants. When Trouba was here, he wasn't able to be the top pair right side defenseman that he had always wanted to be, and I think he was being held back.
Being right side,
always right side, always dreamed of it, and he couldn't get to that here. Was traded to the Rangers in the Neil Pionk trade. I had never thought of him as captain material, but I think he's really took his game to a new level. You saw him in the highlights this year, seemingly every night taking somebody's.
He was a menace to society.
Yeah,
or at least a menace to the rest of the league.
He's dangerous out there. So, congratulations to him, and I think he's really fulfilled his potential in New York as top pair right side D and now captain.
Sorry, I just can't help laugh when you say that, and it is true. But we'll all remember the infamous press release from KO Enterprises and one Kurt Overhart when he was trying to get traded out of here earlier. And we all remember how that played out. The Winnipeg Jets said, "Oh, well, you guys take a seat. Let us know when you want to get together and make something happen." They did the 2-year deal, and then with 1 year left on Trouba's team control, he got shipped out to the Blue Shirts. And hey, you know what? He signed the big long-term deal. I think when they signed him, they envisioned this as a spot for him. And I'll tell you what, he's come into his own. He's a top defenseman, and now he's the captain of the Rangers. I'll say this, though. I was a little bit surprised. Not that I don't think Trouba could be a good captain in the NHL, but when you look at the other players in that room, Zibanejad, Panarin, but especially Chris Kreider. Kreider's been a lifetime Ranger, signed the 8-year extension, as did Trouba, and then put up 52 goals last year. He's the veteran in the room. I really did think that Chris Kreider would be the guy, but obviously looking at this new generation of Rangers going forward, a little bit younger, a player on the blue line, Trouba gets the honor and the responsibility that comes along with wearing the C in a big Original Six market. Yeah,
that's New York. I mean, you feel like a proud father almost. Trouba drafted here, came up here. You don't feel like a proud father for Jacob Trouba? You watched him grow up, him and Shifley had all those videos talking about watching High School Musical and all that. And now captain of the New York Rangers. And I agree. I was shocked that Kreider wasn't the captain already. He's been there for so long, 31 years old. He's signed a big deal. But I think Trouba, you just watch him play and it gets you fired up. I mean, I don't know what he's like in the room, but I mean, good for him. And he did have the video that the Rangers tweeted out.
Yeah, let's play this. And this will be for podcast listeners. You can go to the Rangers site and see it. But essentially, they were ready for this day. And this is part of the reason why the People's Insider, Kevin Weeks, knew that it was being released in the next 24 hours, probably. Some of his little birdies said that they were doing some recordings, working on some things for an announcement, which all came through today. Some greetings from his teammates, but also part of the video they put out was a letter to Rangers fans by new captain Jacob Trouba. This is how it looked if you're with us on YouTube, and sounded for you folks on the pod.
Dear Rangers fans, it is a privilege and an honor to be named the next captain of the New York Rangers. I've said before that it takes me a certain amount of time to adjust to new surroundings. After coming to a new team and a new city and getting to know new teammates and staff, it took most of my first season until I felt at home. I know I'm ready for this. There will be challenges, we will face adversity, but I will give you all I have. Our goal is to bring a Stanley Cup to this city, and while I can't promise it, I can promise I will give you my hard trying. Thank you, Rangers fans, for your consistent and continued support. I can't wait to see you at the Garden this year.
Trouba's intro to Ranger fans as the captain of NYR. And I'll say this, Reem. I mean, he did play very well for Winnipeg for a long time. But even now, 3-4 years removed, I almost cannot look at that guy and think anything other than one of the dumbest plays I've ever seen in my life. Game 5 against St. Louis, trying to just hold the puck behind the net for the last, 25 seconds of the third period. And we all remember how that ended up.
I was wondering how long it would take to bring up. It's kind of funny because Trouba was part of one of the greatest moments in Jets history, scoring, the tying goal against Nashville?
And the comeback against Nashville.
And maybe, I'm getting chills
game.
Thinking about one of the most electric atmospheres at whatever Canada Life Center, LMTS plays, MTS Center, whatever you want. But I could also, his last game as a Jet was that Game 5 against the Blues where, 20 seconds left, has a puck behind the net, goes to pin it against the boards. I was there with my dad, and I'm standing up saying, "What are you doing? There's so much time left. Move the puck." And I think there was LeBron memes. You remember the J.R. Smith? It was him like this with Trouba doing. There was it was people were bringing that picture, I think, on signs for his return. And I remember Schwartz scores with seconds left, and the Jets lose Game 5, and don't show up for Game 6. And the team has gone downhill since then slowly. But I mean, I didn't move. My dad and I, we didn't move for a long time. I think the building was empty before we got up. That was a devastating loss. And again, so much stuff has happened since then. Trouba leaving, Bufflin leaving, Myers leaving, Tanev.
I might even offer up that was the turning point in, I guess I should say, I mean, listen, we talked at length about what happened in the second half of that season. The Jets were right at the top. They ended up blowing the division, meeting St. Louis in the first round. And the last few months of the season, they weren't playing very well, and they were nothing like the team that, did all those special things in 17-18 and even in the first half of the year. That being said, after the start of that series where the team lost the first 2 games, they came back and won back-to-back in St. Louis and regained home ice. And it really did seem like, the Jets had woken up, flipped the switch as everyone was waiting for it to happen. And it sort of did. And they were up 2-0 in that game. There was the infamous Kevin Hayes pulling the goal, a sure goal out of the net. and then the comeback started. But that play in particular, not getting it to overtime, having the team, I mean, you mentioned how shocked everyone was in. The team was as well. I mean, they basically barely showed up for game number 6. I mean, that was, for all intents and purposes, a 5-game series that ended on that goal. And from that moment on, everything has changed for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, obviously, there was COVID. There was a lot of things that's happened to all teams around. But you could say that that was the final year, really, of the opportunity. And if you look at what the team is going through now, I would certainly say that, it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and go revisionist history. But some of the changes that we've talked about happening last year, this summer, if you back that up to after that 2019 season and responded with some, significant change, and I would suggest the head coaching spot would have been maybe the place to start, maybe we're all in a very different situation right now with the team.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I'm not sure it's fun to look back, or maybe not fun in this case, but I think it's pretty clear when the team's history that, midway through the 2019 season and after the loss to the Blues and the no-show in Game 6, and we're talking about this now because Trouba was just named captain. He was a big part of those Jets teams. The window, what you thought was, opening, started to close, and I'm enjoying a lot of the comments here from the chat saying, one play didn't lose the game. I agree, one play didn't lose the game, but we can still talk about key plays from the game. I thought that was Kevin Hayes' best game as a Jet, even if we can talk about him taking the puck out. The reason why he was able to prevent his own goal was because he was playing so awesome in that game. And there was one other comment. Someone said, we should have traded Trouba when he asked. I was like, well, he was a huge part of that team that had led them to an amazing first half of the season. And, that was a Stanley Cup caliber team that lost to the Blues, who did go on to win. So Trouba, a big part of those teams, named captain today and allowing us to look back on some Jets memories.
Yeah. Hey, one other thing that we were talking more about the Bombers and so many other things, the Bruins signings yesterday. One thing we didn't get to from the weekend, Brad Treleving signing Jonathan Huberdeau to the 8-year, $10.5 million contract. And this really is incredible, Reem. When you think about, how blindsided I'm sure Huberdeau was that he was traded from the Panthers to Calgary in the first place. And after being there for all those years, Johnny Gaudreau leaving $15 million on the table to sign a 7-year deal in Columbus. And Jonathan Huberdeau shows up in Calgary, and before he even skates on the ice at the Saddle Dome, gets Johnny Gaudreau's check put in front of him, signs the deal, and is now inked for the next 8 years. Absolutely fascinating the way this is played out with the Calgary Flames. And, again, like often when you're signing guys that are 29 years old, maybe by the time they're 37 or 36, the deal doesn't look as good. But for a team that had such a great season last year, to get Huberdeau signed in the fashion that they did, avoiding all sorts of drama next season, it can't be anything else but a big win for Calgary, who I think have really done an amazing job at salvaging where they're at right now out of what was pretty much a no-win situation.
Yeah, we had the report that I think it was like Thursday night or something. Elliot Friedman said, Brad Treleving went out for dinner with Jonathan Huberdeau in Montreal. And the next day or something, they had announced the contract. It was the evening during the Bomber game. And what a win for Huberdeau. You're not part of the long-term plans in Florida. Calgary had all this money they were going to offer Johnny Gaudreau, and then they just changed the names, change it from Gaudreau to Huberdeau. The EAU remains. But, he hasn't played. Gets his money. Why not sign with them when they say, we'll give you $84 million? Because if you turn it down, you could end up like John Klingberg, who's getting the 1-year deal in Anaheim. So, we don't know how it's going to work out in Calgary. You'd like to think it's going to work out really well, and they're going to be very good again. But, hey, when they're offering you, $10 million a year for what is it, 7 seasons? I forget. $84 million.
10.5 by 8. $84 million.
That's
total.
a lot.
Guaranteed USD.
You know, maybe the last couple of years are kind of rough for a guy going late 30s, but look, they needed a win. And if you're going to give the money to Gaudreau, you're okay with that. You should be okay with giving it to Huberdeau. So I like the move for Calgary. Now, if they can get Uyghur signed, oh man, there were some fake Twitter rumors out there. I don't believe those, but
yeah, fake news. When a guy with 10 followers is breaking a signing, folks, I mean, step away from the social media feed for a little bit, or potentially just throw out the mute or the block. I know some people talking about the World Juniors. We will touch on that. Just a couple Jets prospect in this event. And what is weird, Remo, is that and I was talking with some friends in Edmonton. Usually when this event is held in Canada, there is a real buzz around it. Now, I think it was already up against it taking place in the middle of August. I know there was a lot of money at stake that I think Hockey Canada, the IIHF, wanted to still, hopefully squeeze out of this tournament. And it's far more profitable in Canada than it is everywhere else. So certainly, I think that was a big part of the decision to do this. Let's just say that if this event was in the United States or Slovakia, Czech Republic, I don't think we're having a tournament right now. And then when you add in the black cloud around Hockey Canada, I think it is one of these events that some people who are huge fans of this event normally at Christmas time probably not going to be spending a lot of time watching it. And it'll be fascinating to see what the numbers are like. I did see some pictures of the rink yesterday, Reem. No rink boards for any sponsors, as you can see. I don't know what the value of all that is essentially being burned, but it really is significant. The only one that is there is on the other side of the rink. It's Tissot, I believe a Swiss watchmaker. But this is sort of uncharted territory for this tournament and for Hockey Canada. Although some positive news, I guess, with Hockey Canada is that Andrea Skinner, who's actually Jeff Skinner's oldest sister, has been named interim chair of the board for Hockey Canada. And I believe even in an interim role, she is the first female to lead the board. So there's quite a bit in and around this event. We'll talk about it coming up with Mike McIntyre in a few minutes. But we are going to get to some football talk with none other than Milt Stegall. Before we do that, I want to give a big thanks to our friends at Wallace & Wallace for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk, the fencing and overhead door specialist, including boathouse doors. Yes, Wallace & Wallace installs and services boathouse doors. In fact, if you're on the lake and a boathouse catches your eye, chances are it's one of theirs. Steel or aluminum doors, polycarbonate or glass panels, and a design that's perfect for your little piece of paradise. Wallace & Wallace has you covered, and with galvanized tracks and springs to protect against rust, you know their doors are built up to stand up to the challenges of life at the lake. They'll also service your door for you. You can give them a call for all of your needs at 204-452-2700 and hit them up at wallacedoors.com or check out their showroom on Lawson Road. I'm getting ready for spring. I got a wedding coming up in a few weeks. And then, of course, hopefully, had such a great time at the Rady dinner. A few more things like that where guys need to get dressed up. If you're like me, probably didn't wear a suit, barely even put a collar on for the last couple of years. Time to change that up, fellas. And there's no better place to spice up the wardrobe than a trip down to Andrew and the gang at F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. Custom suits beginning at just $400. More options than you can imagine. Get the perfect suit for you that fits and looks great. And not to mention 3 custom shirts right now for $210, a great summer special, all sorts of accessories and more. And hey, wedding party, planning a wedding next summer, talk to the guys at F Apparel, 15% off for all the wedding party if you guys get your suits over at F Apparel. Check them out online as well at F, that's EPH apparel.com. The gang at Vita Health, helping Manitobans and Winnipeggers enjoy their holiday summer. Stocked with Winnipeg's best selection of local, organic, and natural grocery supplements and beauty products, all at great prices. Grab-and-go deli with Vitamarket soup, salad, sandwiches, and incredible barbecue options, including lean bison steaks, chicken, burgers, dogs, and if you're entertaining, sober Carpenter beers, clever mocktails, some great non-alcoholic options for you. And hey, if you can't make it into one of their 7 locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, you can shop online and schedule an in-store pickup at myvita.ca. And once again, a huge thanks to the gang over at Aikens Lake. Had such an amazing few days there on the weekend. Thanks to Remis for holding it down on Thursday and Friday. Pitt and Julie Turenne, Enzo taking care of the amazing cuisine for us while we're there. Our guides, Liam and Paul, just an absolutely magical few days for us. If you're thinking about maybe heading out to Aikens next year, talk to Pitt Turenne right now. You can hit them up on Twitter at Aikens Lake or check out the website at aikenslake.com for everything that awaits you at Aikens and to book for next year. All right, we got a couple days until the Bombers are back at it, looking to go to 10-0. Stanley Bryant's going to join us tomorrow on the program. Really looking forward to that. But no one we enjoy talking Bombers with more than TSN panelists and all-time Bomber great Milt Stegall, who joins us now on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Milton, how are you, my friend? Great to have you on WST.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be on, man. I'm excited about the CFL and, of course, what the Bombers are doing so far this season.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun topic to get to, certainly on the show, walking the streets of Winnipeg. This team, Bomber fans have been on a high for the better part of the last 3 years with the 2019 Grey Cup, running it back last season. But Milt, I mean, I don't even know where we start with just how impressive running the table through the first half of the season has been, especially when you consider the schedule and how much football they played. I mean, you've been talking a lot about this on TSN, but how about them Bombers?
Man, it has to be awesome to live in Winnipeg and Manitoba right now, because what the Bombers have done, as you alluded to, since 2019, basically since Zach stepped on the scene, you know, it's been truly amazing. It's a good time to be a Winnipeg Blue Bomber and a Winnipeg Blue Bomber fan. And what they've done this year is even more amazing. 9-0, on the verge of hopefully being 10-0, and the way the season has been structured, you know, they're the only team who hadn't had a bye week. You know, they played 2 games on the road within 6 days, and they were able to weather that storm. So right now, in my opinion, their only opponent is themselves. And you look at this upcoming game, their toughest opponent is that bye week. You don't want these players thinking about that bye week, because man to man, physically, they're a lot better than these Montreal Alouettes. But if those players start thinking about going home and seeing family and sleeping in their own bed, that could somewhat get deterred from what they're trying to do. So as long as they're focused, and what I've seen and what I've heard of what Mike O'Shea does in week in and week out, as long as they're focused, they should start the season 10-0.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned Coach O'Shea, because it just seems like under O'Sh, they have built the most professional, workman-like culture of accountability, of showing up to do your job, and every guy playing for each other. And I mean, there would be plenty of games earlier on in this season where you could have understood maybe a little bit of a letdown. I mean, considering how much they played, the travel, all those things. Mm-hmm. Mike O'Shea won't even mention that stuff. I mean, those excuses don't even begin to enter the conversation. And right. I mean, sometimes it's boring and cliche, but they're looking at the next practice, the next rep, the next play, the next game. And as boring as that might be for the media, that's what wins football games and what wins championships, isn't it?
100%. And I talked to a guy, head equipment guy, Brad Foddy, who's been there basically since went forever. And he told me, and he wasn't talking about any bad about any other structure or any other head coaches, but he said what Mike O'Shea has in place is almost flawless. It's almost perfect. It's impeccable. What he does, what he preaches to the players, to the coaches about moving on regardless of what happened, and making sure everyone understands their role and become superstars at their role. Not superstars, but superstars at their role. So, I mean, it's truly amazing what he's done for this organization. When you think about it, some years back, there were a lot of people saying, we need to get rid of this guy. He's not fit for this organization. But what he's done, the way he keeps his composure and the way the team follow his lead, it's truly something special. If I'm correct, I don't know if Mike O'Shea is under contract next year. I don't understand what's going on with that. But if I'm the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I'm writing him, giving him a blank check and saying, whatever you want, we're willing to give it to you, because he's done so much, not only for that organization, but for the entire city and for the entire province, Manitoba.
Well, there won't only be a check waiting for Mike O'Shea, but I'll tell you what, if they can get it done again this season, I think they might start working on that bust outside the stadium right now, because, I mean, he's certainly doing things that have never been done. And, well, I mean, we haven't had a three-peat champion since the Moon Edmonton teams of the early 80s. So it really is incredible. I want to ask you about the offense in particular. Zach Collaros has had a wild season. I mean, there have been a couple games. I mean, even Montreal threw a few picks. The Edmonton game where they won, completing only 7 passes. But man, Milt, I mean, the way, especially earlier on when the offensive line wasn't totally intact, the way he was creating time, creating space to give his receivers a chance to get open. I mean, I know we've all been talking about Nate Rourke, and we'll talk about the incredible season that he's having right now. But man, Zach is playing at a very, very high level, and you can't win 9 games in a row without your quarterback leading the way.
Not in the CFL. If your quarterback is not playing well, you're not going to win too many other games. Ask the majority of teams in the East, and they'll answer that question. So he's playing at a high level, and it's been that way since he stepped on the field at the end of 2019, and those players are feeding off of him. You talk about that offensive line. There were some talks because early on, Brady Oliveira, Augustine, whoever was in the backfield wasn't, getting a bunch of yards, but now they're getting that going. But this offense is going to continue to play only as well as their quarterback, Zach Collaros, is playing. And he's playing, once again, at an MOP level. Of course, we saw some mistakes last game, but when you have a team as good as Winnipeg, not just offensively, when your quarterback, when one of your superstars is not playing to his best at the time, those other facets, those other players will step up, and that's what happened. But Zach will continue to play at a high level. He's found his groove. Him and Buck Pierce have a great relationship. That marriage is still in the honeymoon phase, if you ask me, the way they're going. So it's a great mixture of players and attitudes and the way they're playing right now. They're just having fun. Yeah, of course, their schedule early on was tough with not having a bye, but when you're winning, you're having fun. You see players dancing, having fun, enjoying themselves. They don't care who gets the credit. As long as they're winning, everything looks good for this team.
Milt, being the great at the wide receiver position, I wanted to ask you about the guy that has to be the leading candidate for the Rookie of the Year, Dalton Schoen. I mean, what an emergence he's had in this Bomber offense through the first 9 games. I mean, rarely do you see a rookie come in with that sort of an impact, but I mean, he has answered every test and every challenge and seems to be getting better and more comfortable with each game.
And I won't put him on the level as Nathan Rourke as far as impact at a young age, but what he's doing, it's pretty amazing. And I say that because most young guys, especially Americans, when they come in, they feel comfortable at the outside receivers. It was that case for me, Leroy Simon. We talk about this. It takes a while to get used to that slot as an American. It took me about 15 to 16 games, same with Leroy Simon when I talked to him, but Schoen has been able to step in, and it's like he's been here before. It's like he's been practicing on this for years because he's able to adjust right away, and it's almost like him and Zach have been practicing for years because they're on the same page. And he's not a fast guy or anything, but he knows how to use angles. He knows how to separate from opposing defensive backs with his size, and when he gets open, Zach knows how to find him. So the fact that he's able to make that big impact at that slot position only in his first year, that's a testament to not only him, but to Zach and Buck Pierce and everything and the way they surround those players. So good for him for making that adjustment right away in the CFL.
The Turtle Man, Milt Stegall, with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk, discussing the undefeated Blue Bombers. Tickets still available for the game Thursday night at IG Field in the rematch against the Montreal Alouettes. Milt, you mentioned Brady Oliveira, and we listened to him speak with the media yesterday after practice, coming off a couple real solid games. And he mentioned the pressure that he was feeling taking over for Andrew Harris, the responsibility of being in that job, and just how tough it was when things weren't going well early on in the season. I think back to 2 key games. the game in BC where the Bomber running game was really snuffed out earlier in that week against Toronto. And they rushed for 80 yards or so in the first quarter, and that seemed to open everything up for Zach Collaros. And he had a real strong game against Calgary a couple weeks back when they were down some players and really needed it. How much more scary of a Blue Bomber team are they for the rest of the Canadian Football League if this running game is able to consistently move the chains?
Yeah, that's the problem. That's a big problem, man. You just look at the last two games, and you can't compare him to Andrew Harris. You know, you're talking about one of the greatest running backs in CFL history and the greatest Canadian running back, but he's starting to look like Andrew Harris in these last two games. Some of the catches he made, some of the runs he's made, and if they could get that running game back to where it's been when Andrew Harris was there, they're going to be a problem because we know what Zach does at a quarterback, but now that offensive line is able to come off that line of scrimmage and smack those defensive linemen and linebackers in the face because they have that running game that sets up the play action pass, and the sky's the limit for it. So I know there was a lot of pressure put on from the outside. I'm sure Brady was putting a lot of pressure on himself. You know, you're trying to replace Andrew Harris, which you can't replace. And I say, don't try to fill his shoes. Just make your shoes your own. Make sure your own shoes are tied tight. And it seems like that's what he's doing. He's creating his own path. He's not trying to follow the path of Andrew Harris. But that running game continues to keep churning out, especially when you get into those October and November and those bad weather games when you need that running attack. It's going to be a tough time trying to stop this Winnipeg Blue Bombers from winning another Grey Cup.
Well, and you know, from a receiver perspective, how exciting is it when you see that running game start to get going, especially early in a game, because of what that means for what the defense has to worry about and the opportunities that might give the opportunity to guys in the passing game?
Yeah, it opens it up. It forces teams to go to man-to-man. And all receivers, that's all we want. Give us an opportunity to play, go mano-a-mano, and we're going to make some plays, you know. And when you're running the ball like that, those linebackers, they have to come up tight. They have to come up because they have to try to stop the run, and that's when you get the big plays. That's when you get the big plays over the top. That's when the receivers get to showcase their skills, score touchdowns, dance, take off their helmet, throw off that long hair that some of these receivers have. But that's what you live for. But it's not easy. You know, you have to grind. Receivers have to go out there and make sure they do their job and block it so you can create those big plays. But it seems like it's happening now. Well, we saw early on the running game was struggling, but right now it seemed to be going in the right direction. And they needed these last two games. But you bring those two games together, the running game and the passing game, you have a complete game. And they're 9-0 now. And imagine what they can do once they finally continue to keep that running game going.
Milt, when you look at the Bombers, just to finish up talking about the blue and gold, I mean, is there any areas that you can see that this team really needs to improve, or have they sort of set the bar and they just need to maintain that going through the rest of the season and into the playoffs?
Well, of course, you have areas. You want to improve in every area. I've watched film, but I haven't just nitpicked like coaches do. And I'm sure if you go into a meeting, Mike O'Shea and Paul, Buck Pierce and all those other coaches, they're finding areas where they need to improve because other teams are seeing those areas and they know, well, maybe this is where we can expose them. So there's always areas, regardless of how the game went, where you can improve on, and you want to make sure you keep improving. When you're the Bombers, you have to understand every single week is like a Grey Cup for other teams. They're trying to stop history from being made, so they're giving their best effort plus another 20% to try to stop that history. So every single game, these Bombers have to understand that those areas that they don't think they need improvement on, they better improve on them because these other teams are definitely looking to expose those areas.
Milt, the game of the week in the Canadian Football League has got to be Calgary and BC. BC's lost once to Winnipeg. Calgary's lost twice, both to Winnipeg. I mean, this is really a matchup between these two teams battling for second place right now in the division. Thoughts on the season that Rourke's having right now and this matchup coming up this week between the next two teams in the West and in the CFL?
Yeah, he as I mentioned about Sean, I think Rourke, he's maybe in his second or third life. He's been here before. He's experienced this before. There's no way that someone of his age who hasn't played much in the CFL can come out and just dominate the way he's dominated. It's good to see. It's good to see a young quarterback come in, especially Canadian quarterback who a lot of people thought couldn't make it in this league. And the way he's dominated, the way he's played, the way he's made his team offensively, defensively, everyone has gotten better. And this is the same team besides the quarterback that they've had the last few years. It's just they put in a quality quarterback. Not saying anything bad about Mike O'Reilly, but the way that that Nathan Rourke has played is it's unfathomable. I haven't seen a player make his team this much better since what Doug Flutie did with Toronto Argonauts in '96 and '97. It's amazing to see, and it's going to be hard to stop. And we saw Winnipeg was able to do it. It'll be interesting to see what these Calgary Stampeders is able to do. And one final note on that, I guarantee you, Bo Levi Mitchell is standing in the back of his head. I've been at the top of the mountain. This guy is at the top of the mountain right now. I want to make sure that I knock him down a couple of notches and I get back up there. So this is going to be a battle between those two guys. And neither one of these teams want to step too far away from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because they're undefeated right now. Calgary lose this game and you're 3 games behind the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It's going to be tough to make up that ground this last half of the season.
Oh, it's a great point about Bo. I mean, I don't think for a second that he's not listening to all this hype before the game and all the hype about the other quarterback and wants to go in and raise his level of play, where we have seen at times this season, it just hasn't been as consistent. On the defensive side, though, this was already going to be a real tough test for Calgary. And now losing Trey Roberson in the secondary against that BC receiving core with Rourke playing the way he is, I mean, that could be very impactful on Friday night.
Oh, without a doubt. You're talking about one of the best defensive backs in the league. He was making a big impact. And that all defense were struggling with him, giving up almost 280 yards a game before this last game. And now he's out. How do you replace him going against one of the best young quarterbacks and the most impactful maybe offense in the league right now? So they're going to have to get creative. And more important than that, Bo is going to have to score some points. This is going to be a shootout if these Calgary Stampeders want to have an opportunity to win. We know BC can score points. So Bo is going to have to step up and have one of the better games of this year if you want to have an opportunity to win against these BC Lions.
Milt, we won't bother spending much time on the JV division of the East, but I will ask you. I will ask you about.
I'm going to use that one on air. I'll give you credit, but I don't have to use that one.
Please do. Saskatchewan and Edmonton. What do we know about the Saskatchewan Roughriders? I mean, what do you make of that team coming off the bye into this game? And on the Elk side of things, are they any better now, halfway into the season, than they were when they looked embarrassing, frankly, at the beginning of the year?
You know what? With Saskatchewan, it's a lot going on. Of course, they're putting a lot of blame on their quarterback not being mobile. That's part of his game. They're putting, talking about that offensive line. But whatever it is, these are the players that are lined up out there, and they need to get it together. This game, people say, well, this game against Edmonton. This game against Edmonton is maybe their biggest game because 5 of their next 6 games are either against Winnipeg or the BC Lions. So that's possible 5 losses right there. So they need to get it together. I know a lot of people in Saskatchewan are talking about, well, we'll just cross over and get to the Grey Cup through the East. It's never happened before. If they're counting on that, they have another thing coming. So they need to try to get it together right now. As far as Edmonton, I mean, their team changes weekly. Chris Jones, we know how intelligent of a head coach he is, the GM. He's shown that in the past. But what he's doing right now, I don't know if that's going to work. And I know he has a bigger plan in store. I know he's looking more towards next year and the year after that. But what he's doing right now, I'm surprised they have 2 victories. But if they go out and win against Saskatchewan this next week, I wouldn't even be surprised because we know what Chris Jones is made of, and we don't know what these Saskatchewan Roughriders are going to do week in and week out. So both of those teams are they're unpredictable every single week, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens after this game.
Now, Milt Stegall, of course, you're going to be heading back north of the border to be on the panel all week for the CFL coverage on TSN, but you're back at home right now. I'm just got to quickly ask, I know so many people remember you and your wonderful family. How's soccer dad life doing? How are Chase and Colin doing? And what's going on with Team Stegall back in Georgia?
Yeah, we're 100% soccer parents, but it's a good thing. Chase, my oldest, I know some remember him in Winnipeg. He's going into his senior year now.
Wow.
He's getting recruited for soccer. My youngest, Colin, who was born in Winnipeg my last year, he's going into the 8th grade, and his life revolves around soccer too. So everything is going good for us. As I just alluded to, my wife and I were both 100% soccer parents, and we love it more than anything. Yes, it takes up a lot of our time, but it also allows us to spend a lot of time with our kids. So everything is great. I enjoy traveling back and forth, of course, doing the CFL thing. But when I come home, it's all about the kids in soccer. So everything is going great.
Well, I'll tell you what, CFL fans from coast to coast, but especially here in Winnipeg, appreciate the time we get to spend with you and the gang every week on the Tube. We'll look forward to it kicking off on Thursday for the Bombers and Alouettes. And Milt, all the best to you and the fam. Thanks for doing this, and we'll look forward to catching up a little later on. Hopefully still talking about an undefeated football team right here in the Peg.
Well, maybe I'll come see you. I'll be in Winnipeg next week. I'm doing the Health Sciences Center thing. So hopefully when I get in town next week, they'll be 10-0, and we'll have something else to talk about.
Milt, thanks so much for doing this, my friend. Have a great weekend, and enjoyed your visit as always.
All right, take care. Have a good one. Thanks.
Great stuff with Milt. And as Milt mentioned, he's going to be in town next week helping support the, I believe it's the HSC Millionaire Lottery. So maybe we'll see if we can grab Milt in talking about a 10-0 team when he's here in the Peg next week. Big thanks to Milt, and we'll all look forward to him joining the rest of the panel on TSN this weekend, beginning Thursday night as the Bombers return home to take on the Montreal Alouettes. And by the way, join us tomorrow on the program. Stanley Bryant will be on the show. And we'll also have a pair of tickets to give away to a lucky Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners. So if you're looking to win tickets to the Bombers, tomorrow's show, make sure to join us live on the YouTube channel. Hey, a big thanks to our friends at Culligan Water, celebrating over 65 years in business as the locally owned water experts in Winnipeg and southern Manitoba. We've got everything you need. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, drinking water systems, and citywide water delivery services, not to mention commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Give them a call at 694-5180. You can visit them in person at 1200 Sargent Avenue or check them out online at drinkculligan.com. Our friends at Royal Sports are ready for the upcoming fall. Of course, hockey season just around the corner. And if you've got a hockey player in the family or you were getting ready for the season, one stop at Royal Sports is all you need. Millions of dollars in hockey inventory, sticks, skates, goalie equipment. They've got it all. And they've got the hockey experts, players working there to help make sure you get the exact and best option for the hockey player in your family. But there's so much more than hockey, soccer, softball, baseball, the best selection of licensed merchandise around, a great bike selection, and of course, disc golf, tennis, and more. Pop by Royal Sports. Tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. They're at 750 Pembina Highway, or follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops. Lots of new stock coming in daily. And of course, we're looking ahead to another big tent sale coming up after the Labor Day weekend. Our friends at Knott Auto Corp will be ready for the game on Thursday. Of course, Trevor and the gang at Knott, big supporters of the Bombers, big supporters of all things Winnipeg, to be honest, and the spot to head to if you're thinking about getting into a new whip. Why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Knott team? Pop down and see them at Waverly and McGillivray and check out all the incredible vehicles on the lot. Or if there's a particular car you've always dreamed of getting, let them know the Knott experts will get it here to Winnipeg at the best possible price and get you in it ASAP. Knott Auto Corp, Waverly and McGillivray. You can check them out online at knott.ca. And hey, a big cheers to our friends at Little Brown Jug. I mentioned this yesterday on the program, but if you missed it, save the date, September 1st. We are going to be doing our first ever sports trivia night at Little Brown Jug. I'll be hosting it, putting together a great option of questions from a local level, Jets, Bombers, and of course, questions from around the sports world. So hope you'll join us. We'll give you details on maybe calling to reserve a table for you and your crew, but make a note, September 1st, Little Brown Jug, William Avenue. And of course, try a 1919 or grab a summer variety pack right now. All the great summer beers available, both at Little Brown Jug, online at littlebrownjug.ca, or at your favorite local beer store. All right, Mike McIntyre's back from his travels on the weekend. We've got lots to get to with Mike. Let's welcome him in now from the Winnipeg Free Press on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Mike, how was the Twin Cities?
Oh, it was great. Three Jays games. We got rained out one of our rounds of golf. We were supposed to play two. We only got one in, but it was a beautiful round. And I got to see, we were there Thursday when the Jays kind of wiped the Twins out of Target Field. And then we were there Friday, Saturday when the Jays lost. So that wasn't the outcome maybe we would have wanted. And then we were heading back on Sunday, listen to the game in the car when they, of course, won in fairly controversial fashion.
I'll say. Rocco Baldelli's still pissed off right now. You could probably see the steam coming out of his ears from Winnipeg.
Yeah, that was a weird one where he was absolutely teeing off on the umpires. Talk about shooting the messenger, Huss. They were just relaying what New York was telling them on the disputed call. I'm not sure why he was so upset. He should have picked up a phone, I guess, and called MLB head office in New York. But yeah, lots of, my goodness, were there ever a lot of Manitobans down there? Like thousands of Manitobans. And it was, it seemed like the Blue Jays were the home team, that's for sure. Beautiful park, of course, Target Field. Even got to see a bit of a country music concert breakout after the game Thursday. I was not familiar with the musical stylings of Cole Swindell, but the guy can sing. He's I'm not really a country music fan, but a lot of folks there were, and kind of a neat thing to have a country music concert piggyback at the end of a baseball game. I don't think he actually took the stage till after 11 o'clock, and he played till like 12:30 or 12:45 in the morning on a Thursday night. So yeah, it was a great trip. Good memories with my son and my dad and my brother. And now here we are back at home.
Nice little boys trip. Well, I mean, as you mentioned, you certainly were not the only Manitobans. I mean, how many people did you see that you just knew there? I mean, from the looks of it on the tube, it seemed like half of Manitoba. And I'm sure there was a lot of people from Northern Ontario and Saskatchewan coming over. But that series is always a big deal. In the last couple of years, it had been very early. It had been like in May. If I'm the Twins, I'm begging the Major League Baseball schedule maker to have that series every year on a nice 4-day span, including a weekend in July or August.
Yeah, I mean, the game on Thursday was sold out, and a big part of that, I suspect, was also the concert. But that was their biggest crowd. That was their first sellout of the year. And then the crowds Friday, Saturday, Sunday were around 30,000, which I'm told were among the biggest crowds they've had all year. And certainly that was by far the biggest series they've had in terms of overall attendance. I mean, they drew about 130,000 for the 4-gamer. So you're right, Huss. A big part of that. I mean, I saw tons of Rough Riders jerseys, talked to some folks.
But there's always Rough Rider. You could be at Wimbledon, the Aussie Open, and there it will at least be one guy wearing a Rough Rider jersey. That is just a law. That's not a take. That is a fact.
So Saturday night's game, the four of us found ourselves, we were actually sitting beside Jason Bell, my colleague at the Free Press, and his buddy who was down there. And we were in a sea of green. We were in the unofficial Rough Rider section somehow along the first baseline. So that was interesting. But yeah, I saw a ton of people I knew, probably like upwards of 50. Yeah, it was a good time for sure. And let's hope. I think the MLB schedule for next year comes out any day now. And I'll be very curious to see, as you said, when that Jays series is, because it would behoove them, as you note, to have it, strategically at a time when you can maximize how many people would come down for it.
Great ballpark. Hey, just before we finish off this part of the conversation, get on to Jets and Bombers stuff. What did you eat at the ballpark? Did you try the pork chop on a stick? One of my favorites, the go-tos out in left field at all Twins games. Anything catch your eye from a food perspective at the game?
Well, what caught my eye was the number of things they serve in helmets. That's like they don't use plates. They like to serve their food in baseball helmets. So my son indulged in the nachos in a helmet. And I don't know how many people I saw who did the same, Huss. And then like later in the game, they're wearing their plate basically on their head. I mean, like I'm looking at some of these people looking for the nacho cheese dripping down the nape of their neck. I hope they at least tried to wash it out in the bathroom before they put it on their head. Although judging by the sobriety of some of the fans at the game, I don't imagine cleaning out their nacho plate was high on the priority list. So I suspect a lot of people went home that night and were like, why do I have cheese in my hair? Why do I have pork in my hair and salsa? So yeah, that was but I didn't try the pork chop on a stick though. However, I tried to keep it as healthy as possible. You know me.
Yeah, definitely. By the way, for you Goldeyes fans, and the Goldeyes are back this weekend, new to the ballpark this year, the beer bat at Craft Beer Corner, and on the other side, the nachos in a helmet. Highly recommended if you're getting out to the ballpark this week to see the fish. You can try it just like in the big leagues. All right, Mike. Mason Appleton gets a 3-year deal. He's coming on the program tomorrow. We'll look forward to talking with him. It's been a very eventful few weeks, getting married, getting his new deal. What did you think of the contract, the fact that it was a 3-year deal as opposed to maybe a shorter term? And, where does he fit in going into next season right now, looking at this depth chart before any additional moves or changes may or may not happen?
Well, so first of all, I was a little surprised that it was 3 years. I mean, I would have thought 2 would probably be more where they come in, and I even thought a 1-year deal was possible. I mean, if you're Mason Appleton and maybe you look at what the Jets have done or maybe what they haven't done this summer, and you think, you know what, there's a chance maybe for me to carve out a bigger role. Maybe I could sneak into that top 6 at times. Maybe I could get some power play time. I mean, the depth chart has taken a bit of a hit. Obviously, Paul Stastny has not been re-signed. Guys like Evgeny Svechnikov were let go. So if you're Mason Appleton, I'm a little surprised that he went for the 3 years, because he might see the opportunity to post some numbers this year, or the potential to do that anyways. That being said, it's a nice number, I think, for him, over $2 million a year on the AAV. And that's about right for probably where he's going to fit in the lineup. I mean, I think right now, Huss, if you look at the depth chart, Mason Appleton is probably where he finished last season, on the third line with Adam Lowry, and we're not sure who else might be on that line. But that's pretty good value for the Jets for what you would pay a traditional third line player, bottom 6 guy. I mean, I personally think, Huss, if the Jets are to maybe take some of the steps that they'd want, ideally, a guy like Mason Appleton, maybe he's pushed down to the 4th line. I just don't think they have the depth right now. And one of the things Mason Appleton does that very few Jets players do is shoot from the right side. Like, they do not have a lot of right-handed shots. And in that sense, they're maybe paying him a few $100,000 just for that skill alone, because there is a shortage of right shots in the forward group. So, I mean, if you're the Jets, you get a piece locked up. Is he a core piece? No. Is he a nice complementary piece? Yeah. And he is a guy that you've drafted and developed, that they obviously lost to Seattle and then got back. And I know the Jets have always thought very highly of Mason Appleton. And, they see this as a return on the investment. So I'm not totally surprised that they committed to 3 years on a Mason Appleton, just because they know the guy. They've known him since the day they drafted him. And so there's a comfort and a familiarity. But I think the Jets, if they're going to take some big steps, you want guys pushing each other for work. And ideally, you'd have a guy like Mason Appleton both challenging for maybe a greater role, but also being challenged for his current role, which is as a third liner.
Well, and speaking of challenging the lineup, I mean, again, this might be a moot point to have this discussion right now, considering what could and, certainly what many people expect to happen before the season, and that be some sort of a shakeup, certainly another body or two. But when you look at the right side of the depth chart right now, I mean, it is pretty bleak. I mean, let's say you've got Ehlers playing on the right side. You've got Blake Wheeler on the right side. I mean, Mason Appleton, Christian Reichel right now is next up on the depth chart. I mean, with all due respect to Reichel, I mean, he was sort of a moose guy that got called up, was injured, did fine and very limited playing time. But I mean, I'm not sure that he projects to be a top 12 player right away. But it was brought up yesterday in chat. With Wheeler's situation, and I've always thought that if you're a good enough team, Blake Wheeler, as he gets at this tail end of the conversation, or of his contract, I should say, might be a player that plays a little bit down in the lineup. And I've always thought there could be a great connection with Blake Wheeler and Adam Lowry if it ever came to that. Does Mason Appleton have the tools, you think, to challenge for a spot up front? Certainly last year we didn't see it. At times before, the one thing that intrigues me about Appleton, Mike, if you dig into some of the underlying numbers, the one thing that he's particularly good at is the forecheck, is getting in on the puck and getting pucks. And, might he be somewhat of a puck retriever, or would that be an option, to play with a couple players that certainly would be more offensively talented, with the goal of having Appleton be the guy that gets that puck, gets possession, and gets it to teammates that might have a better chance of lighting the lamp?
Well, I think for sure the Winnipeg Jets believe that Mason Appleton is capable of perhaps pushing for work even in the top six and a greater role. And I think, for evidence of that, Huss, you just look back to that season in the bubble. We got Piper here, by the way. She's just going to make her token appearance.
Hey, Piper.
She's been laying on my lap here as we chat. So Mason Appleton in that bubble season, and yes, that was a strange year, of course, in terms of the variety of competition. The Jets only played, 6 other teams all year, but Mason Appleton put up some pretty nice numbers. He had 12 goals in 56 games. If you prorate that to a full season, like he was knocking on the door of 20 goals. And he had another 13 assists, 25 points. So this was a guy that was looking at a 20 goal, 20 assist over a full 82 game season. And, that's pretty good. That would be really good production for a third liner. And that's a guy that could, perhaps patch in sometimes up the lineup. Of course, that led to Seattle selecting him in the expansion draft. I think last year, Mason Appleton would admit, was a step back. He only had 8 goals total in 68 games, and only 2 in 19 games with the Jets. So, he didn't produce the way I think he and a lot of other people thought. So I guess the question is, where is the real Mason Appleton? Is it the guy that was on pace for 20 goals a couple seasons ago, or is it the guy who had 8 in almost a full season last year? And maybe the real Mason Appleton is somewhere in between those two goalposts, which would make you say, okay, 2 million or 2.1 million, that's probably about right. But I would agree with you. I mean, Blake Wheeler as a third liner, I think, and a guy who still gets some power play time, that's probably an effective way of using Blake Wheeler. The problem is, if you're the Jets today, what do you have to supplant Blake Wheeler in your top 6? And I think right now the answer is not a whole lot.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
an ad or a trade or internally, remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know a lot of people have that thought, and it's been talking about for a while, that Wheeler take maybe a more secondary role than being the guy that he's been for so long. But that's easier said than done if you don't have players better than that guy to take their spot in the lineup. And as of now, right now, speaking of Wheeler, I mean, we haven't heard a lot on the trade front. I mean, everything has been quite quiet, which often happens in and around this time. Although I will say this, I think this is a very different year because of how many teams still need to make moves based on the fact that they're already over the cap right now. Right. And I think Cheveldayoff might be sort of holding his cards, knowing that there will be a level of desperation by some of these teams, and maybe that puts them in the best chance to, get the best of a deal a little later on. But as far as Blake Wheeler goes, Mike, I mean, we were just talking about Jacob Trouba being named the captain of the New York Rangers. It's hard to ignore the fact that Blake Wheeler's been on the market. Both team and player seem to be keen on potentially moving on. And to me, that is not a hockey trade at all. I mean, we know that with this contract, what comes back is not going to be, it's not going to make the team better on the ice, frankly. This is more about culture, leadership, allowing other players to maybe move into that role that's been taken by Blake for a long time. So I guess my question is, if they don't make this deal happen, which I think is probably getting more unlikely as we get closer to the season, how do things look under Rick Bowness? Is it a clean sheet for everyone, a clean slate? Does Blake Wheeler come back with, another sit-down legendary leader interview like a couple years ago? Or do they just basically act as if this summer and last year didn't happen? Rick Bowness is the new head coach and go at it from there. I mean, to me, that's the most fascinating thing about this season. If they do bring it back pretty much intact as to Blake Wheeler's role, is he the captain? And, how that goes over with everybody else on the team, because there was a reason why they were trying to move this player. And to me, it's not really anything to do with goals and assists on the ice.
No, and a big part of it, of course, is salary and the fact that he's not an $8+ million player right now, and that's a big part of why there wouldn't be a major return. You look at what Columbus got back for a guy like Bjorkstrand, and that was purely a salary dump. I mean, and
at 5.4 a year, I mean, which you can make an argument is pretty good value considering what he's produced.
For sure. I mean, you would take Bjorkstrand over Blake Wheeler in a heartbeat, especially at those numbers. I think there is going to be an element of a clean sheet and a fresh start, but I think it would be dangerous to ignore how last season played out and just pretend it doesn't exist, because it does. It did happen. It does exist. And, if the only changes are the voice behind the bench and nothing else really changed from the roster, I mean, other than you flipped a few months on the calendar and your record is now 0-0, I'd still be worried about what's going to happen, at the first sign of adversity that hits this team. Are people's noses getting out of joint? Are feelings going to get hurt? Are feathers being ruffled again? Like it seems like they were. So I think it would be dangerous to just pretend that didn't happen, ignore it. And so I'm fascinated, if Blake Wheeler is in fact still a Winnipeg Jet when training camp rolls around, to just hear what he says, and maybe more importantly, how he says what he says. We're going to get a bit of a sneak peek next week, not into Blake Wheeler's mindset, but another player that was clearly disgruntled and unhappy, and that's Mark Scheifele. He'll be back in Winnipeg next week. He's teeing it up in the Manitoba Open under a sponsor's exemption. And I suspect probably next Wednesday, if not Thursday, we'll hear from Mark, before he plays his first round at Southwood. And I suspect that, there'll be some golf questions clearly, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of hockey questions about, his mindset and what happened in the last few months. Like, my understanding is there's been a number of chats, obviously between Rick Bowness and Mark Scheifele, but I believe Kevin Cheveldayoff has had some sit downs with Mark Scheifele as well, trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. And so I think the talk of trading Mark Scheifele, which was pretty loud back in the spring, clearly that's died down. Mark Scheifele, it would appear, is here for at least one more season, and they'll maybe cross that bridge when they have to get there.
Hey, let me ask you this. Do you think that trade talk has died down because things are smoothed over and they've gotten over the problems that they had last year? Or is it simply because Pierre-Luc Dubois is not signing a long-term deal? And, you can't lose both of your top two centers.
Well, sure. But the fact is you might lose both your top two centers because Mark Scheifele has the exact same rights that Pierre-Luc Dubois has in 2 summers from now.
Well, I'm talking about right now, this
right now,
offseason.
for sure. But I mean, you can't kick that too far down the road either. And so we talk about maybe the best time to trade Pierre-Luc Dubois is at the trade deadline. Well, will that also be the best time to trade Mark Scheifele? I mean, if Mark Scheifele's not re-signing here, and I don't know if he is or isn't, I don't know where Mark Scheifele's mind is. But if you're Mark Scheifele and you haven't really won anything in Winnipeg, save for that one run to the Western Conference Final, and you're now 31 years old when your contract expires, and you're thinking, maybe I only got a few years left, this is my last deal. I mean, if he's not going to sign long-term in Winnipeg, the Jets, just like with Pierre-Luc Dubois and potentially Connor Hellebuck, they're going to have to try and move these guys for assets. So, one of the questions, I guess, for Mark Scheifele will be, do you envision your long-term future here in Winnipeg? Or, when your contract's up in 2024, like, are you looking elsewhere? And that's a question the Jets they'd want an answer to that sooner than later for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think for Mark Scheifele, and Blake Wheeler, if they're both here in camp, I mean, I think it's almost how they say what they say as opposed to what they say that's going to be most interesting. And more than that, Huss, the old actions speak louder than words. It's how they start the season on the ice, right? Like if the first few games, if we're like, oh my God, here we go again, then there's a big problem, right? But who knows? Maybe these guys, maybe Brick Bonus is the breath of fresh air that they needed and enough to kind of to calm things down where they're going to come to camp with, a brand new attitude. We'll see.
Well, and the funny thing is about, hearing from Scheif next week is that, listen, I'm sure that his agents, I'm sure the PR team at the Winnipeg Jets will have, this clearly mapped out beforehand. And I mean, I fully expect him to come out and speak like he's got a positive attitude and that whatever was the issue last year is behind him. Although I can't help but remember the last time we heard him talk was he wanted to see the direction of what's happening with the team going forward. What's changed since Mark Scheifele spoke at the end of the season to right now, other than losing Paul Stastny and Eric Comrie? Not a lot. So I do wonder how much that was just real frustration with the way things went at the end of the season and a personally disappointing season. And the fact that for the first time in a long time, he sort of went from being the golden boy of the team to someone that was taking some legitimate criticism. How different is that situation right now other than, a guy like Rick Bowness? But Rick Bowness can change, I think, an atmosphere quite a bit. But you're exactly right. All the nice things can be said through training camp and things can go well. If you start 0-5 or the team's struggling, or we see some of the things that really, I think, irked fans and probably management last year in Scheifele's game, you do wonder where they're sitting at once the season gets going.
For sure. And, fortunately, we're getting closer here by the day and by the week to starting to get those answers. I mean, training camp is about 5 weeks away. And this should, for a number of reasons, be a real interesting one. Maybe not the same optimism that was around the team a year ago when we were talking about, the start of camp and all the excitement that was in the air, but there's certainly a large degree of interest, I think, around what this team is going to look like. And I just personally think, Huss, there's still another shoe or two to drop here, because I just frankly would be stunned if the roster that we're seeing today is the one they come to camp with. I think for a number of reasons, there's still some other things that they are trying to do and that may happen. I mean, and I think one of the things we've talked about extensively is the blue line and what they're going to do. And so, guys like Johnny Kovacevic, Leon Gawanke, those guys aren't waiver exempt anymore. Are they really going to risk losing a Johnny Kovacevic, a drafted and developed, promising young blue line? Are they willing to risk losing that guy because of a cluster on defense, a cluster that wasn't good enough to get the job done last year that they will have made zero changes to? I don't know what Kevin Cheveldayoff is thinking. We know he's tried some things. And going back to, how we started this chat today about talking about Mason Appleton and his role, it is interesting that we know the Jets were in on a guy like Calle Jarnkrok and they didn't get him. He's a right shot. He's a guy who might have pushed Mason Appleton down a line, right? If the Jets sign Jarnkrok, maybe he's on the third line and Appleton's on the fourth. Danton Heinen was another guy they took a run at. He's a left shot, unlike Jarnkrok. But again, we know the Jets have tried to do some things and they haven't succeeded. But there are still some names, some players out there. And I suspect, as I said, that there are still some moves that we may see happen here, especially as teams who are maybe in cap purgatory look to a team like Winnipeg that has some cap room as they stand today. That's without making a Blake Wheeler move or a Brendan Dillon move. They have cap space, and the Jets could perhaps weaponize that cap space to add a player that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise thought that they could get.
Oh, you know what, Mike, I think you nailed it. I mean, I've been kind of thinking and talking about this for the last couple of days with where things are right now. I mean, I think this in some ways is a little bit of a staring match between general managers like Kevin Cheveldayoff and one of the dozen odd teams that are over the cap right now. And I mean, to me, I think the best case scenario for Winnipeg, outside of a real earth-shaking move of a top player that, you know, significantly changes that core, that top six, would be to move one of the blue liners. And, you know, whether they're talking about a Nate Schmidt or a Brendan Dillon, I mean, there's all sorts of guys to do it. Move them out, bringing back a forward that potentially could be making $1 or $2 million more. Right. That gives a team a little bit of cap relief. But more importantly, from a Winnipeg standpoint, you know, moves some of the cap distribution from the blue line to the forward group. I mean, Stonewall Dave said, I'm not 100% sure you can say that Wheeler moving on isn't a hockey trade. He's blocking younger players, perhaps better players, opportunity. Well, listen, if we were talking about the defense with guys like Ville Heinola and Dylan Samberg, I've got a lot of time for that argument. Right now, there just aren't those players that are better than Blake Wheeler that should be playing ahead of him right now. And, you know, as I said, I mean, I probably feel differently about that trade if, you know, it was a situation like they had on the blue line right now with obvious guys that deserve to be playing more than aren't there. You know, with the lack of ads up front right now, Mike, and the loss of Paul Stastny, this is as a weak a forward group from 1 to 12, I think, that we've seen in a long time. And it's quite clear that there absolutely needs to be another body or two coming in to compete for jobs, if not a more established NHL player coming in to take a spot, potentially even in the top 6 or at least the top 9.
Right. I mean, like, the question is, who is Blake Wheeler blocking? Is he blocking Christian Reichel? Is he blocking Mikey Esamont or Jeff Malott or Alex Limoges or Kevin Stenlund or Saku Manalainen? I mean, I think the answer to those questions is probably no. I don't think you're right. It's a different story on the blue line. And that's why, to me, this was a Jets team, Huss. You know, for all of the talk about the blue line last year, they lost a lot of games where if they had gotten another goal and maybe a little more scoring from the bottom 6, might have been a different story. And we know Rick Bowness and how he likely is going to coach this team. If he can get this team to do what, you know, he got the Dallas Stars to do, we could be in for a lot of 3-2 kind of games, right? And so if you're the Jets and you didn't get the scoring, the production from your bottom 6 that you would like last year, and you've made no additions at this point to it, other than hoping, you know, Cole Perfetti will come in and play a full season, but he's going to be in your top 6, presumably. But you're right. You didn't replace Stastny. You've lost Svechnikov, and you've signed a bunch of depth guys. I mean, do you really have enough to kind of go to battle with? And I think that's an area the Jets really ought to be focusing on here, is finding a player or two. And again, judging by some of the names they've been in on, I think that has been something they've tried to do this summer. They just have had no success so far. But there are still a few names out there. I mean, a guy like Sonny Milano is a real interesting one to me. He's not a guy that's probably going on the 4th line, but Sonny Milano is a guy that, you know, he was playing in Anaheim as an offensive playmaker, as a creator. And he hasn't signed with anybody. You know, could the Jets be a fit for him and vice versa? I don't see why not. And the Jets have some real skilled players that you'd think a guy like Milano might be able to mesh with. So I suspect at this point, the reason he hasn't signed is what he's asking, and maybe what teams are offering aren't on par with each other. And so maybe he has to, as we get closer to camp, lower his asking price. And kind of like that game of chicken that you talked about, that, you know, that staring match that's going on. Eventually something has to give when it comes to some of these players and some of these other GMs that have to create cap space.
Hey, well, speaking of free agents, and I don't think the Jets are at all in this mix, but what do you think the Kadri deal ends up looking like? Is he going to get his term and money? I have to laugh. I mean, there's been all these rumors that he's, you know, in with the New York Islanders and is going to go to be the Island, which would be ultimate Lou Lamoriello to have this deal done, make him promise that he won't tell anyone, and literally just have Kadri show up to camp. Oh, yeah, by the way, we signed him a month ago. I mean, only Lou Lamoriello does. But, I mean, this is the most interesting one because, I mean, John Klingberg's signing a one-year deal to essentially go through this again. And Anaheim, to their credit, picks up a player that can help them for a part of the season and then be a pretty significant trade chip at the trade deadline. Remis sort of described it as almost like buying a first-round pick, which is probably the way it ends up. But, I mean, how do you see Kadri ending up this year? Is he going to be in a Klingberg-like situation, going through this again next season, hopefully with a better result?
Well, I think the term and the number that Kadri and his crew had in mind clearly has not been there at this point. And maybe it's there from a team that he has no interest in signing with. Like, there may be teams willing to pay him what he's asking and give him the years, but if they're not poised to, be a contender anytime soon, that's probably not something he's looking at. The Islanders are interesting, and there's a team that would have to clear some cap space to bring a guy like Kadri on board. And so while I don't think the Jets are likely in on Kadri, although their name was linked to them, I think, by some reports earlier on in free agency, could they be in on a guy that the Islanders have to move out to make room? Anthony Beauvillier is a name that, has been talked about as a potential trade chip. I don't know, but there's an example. We know that there's probably still some deals like that, like the Bjorkstrand deal. They had to trade him so they could fit Patrick Laine's contract. Bjorkstrand's a great player that Seattle picked up basically for nothing, a couple draft picks, and other than paying his salary. So I'm sure the Jets would love to find a similar type of situation where a team has to move a good player out, not because they don't like the player, but because they have something else that they're trying to do. And the Jets would be there, waiting with open arms. It's just, the Jets, they don't have a ton of cap space, but they do have some. And the idea of kind of weaponizing it is an intriguing one. So for all the talk of what the Jets haven't done so far this offseason, they do have that in their back pocket. And I think it would be a tough sell, though, Huss, to this fan base if they bring the group to camp and they've got a ton of cap space that they didn't do anything with, that they just decided to mainly run it back and not spend a bunch of money after what they've done the last few years. I don't know how they would be able to really pitch that to the fan base. And I'd be a little surprised if that ends up being the play here.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, I mean, the one key loss right now, certainly up front, has been Paul Stastny. Paul Stastny still doesn't have a contract.
Right.
Or hasn't signed one yet. And I'm sure is mulling over what options he has right now and has said that he wants to go to a contender, of which the Jets are probably not in that category right now, I think it's safe to say. And for all the talk that we've been said about looking for change and getting new players in here, I still think the loss of Paul Stastny is going to be significant if they don't have anyone filling that out. Do you think that ship has sailed, or might, with waiting and seeing the way this market is playing out, might there be an option to revisit Paul Stastny? Or do you think that if Jet fans are holding out hope that maybe something can be salvaged, they should move on?
It's funny you asked me that, Huss, just as we were starting our conversation here. I get a number of these emails, I'm sure you do as well, from various odds makers out there, different scenarios, in all kinds of different sports. But anyways, I just got one here a few minutes ago that looked at the available free agents still. Nazem Kadri, PK Subban is another one they threw out, and Paul Stastny is another. Phil Kessel too. Interesting to see where will Paul Stastny play game one of the 2022-23 NHL season. The Avalanche are the runaway favorites. They're minus 150. The Flames are next at plus 300. And then there's the Jets at plus 325. Anaheim at plus 450 and Vegas at plus 650 are the other options. But so the odds makers still think the Jets have a chance. By the way, the same odds makers have the Jets as the sixth favorite behind Edmonton, Minnesota, Calgary, Arizona, and Chicago to land Phil Kessel. I wouldn't hold my breath on that happening, but interesting that the Jets are a team that are listed there on the odds. So I don't think the ship has completely sailed, but I do think Colorado makes a lot of sense, for Stastny, especially if Kadri isn't brought back to the Avalanche. And I'm guessing that at this point, that ship has probably sailed in Colorado, short of them making a move to really clear some significant cap space. They just wouldn't be able to fit Kadri in, even if he was willing to maybe take a bit of a discount to go back to the Avalanche. I doubt they can make the numbers work. But Paul Stastny is a guy where, he would probably take less money at this stage of his career to go to somewhere like Colorado, if it meant having a legitimate shot at winning a Stanley Cup next year. So, I'm sure the Jets would be willing to pay Paul Stastny what they feel he's worth. And I don't think the Jets are going to get outbid for Paul Stastny is I guess, the best way to put it. But I think they'd be in tough to maybe match what a team like Colorado could offer in terms of a winning environment. And that's where they ultimately may fall short. But you know what? If the Jets were to circle back and bring Paul Stastny back, that would be, I think, a real shot in the arm for this organization, because they could then say, Paul Stastny said he wants to go to a winner. Clearly, he thinks Winnipeg can be a winner. If he doesn't come here, though, you can kind of say the opposite is true, right?
No doubt about it. Mike McIntyre's with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hey, Mike, hang tight. I just got to quickly thank our friends over at Princess Auto for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Bomber game Thursday night. You know where the place to be is before the game. The Princess Auto tailgate zone, opening a couple hours outside of the stadium before kickoff. $5 beers, $3.50 pop and hot dogs, DJ Finesse spinning, great prizes from the Princess Auto team. If you're going to the game, and you should be, get there early and take in the fun at the Princess Auto tailgate zone. And of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Bombers and Winnipeg Sports Talk, and the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Great day for a visit to Nick and Nicky out at the Nick and Nicky DQ group. 4 locations in Winnipeg and southern Manitoba. DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's. Serving up some incredible new Blizzard flavors this summer. A great lineup of stack burgers that are phenomenal. And of course, all the ice cream novelties and treats, cones you can get. And hey, if you've got a party coming up, it's always better with a DQ cake. Hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll get a custom made, quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. And of course, Blue Jays back in action tonight. Bombers coming up on Thursday, and a full slate of CFL games on the weekend. No better place to gather with the gang to watch the game in your free local Boston Pizza Lounge. Check out the great summer menu featuring the carnitas, pizzas, tacos, and pizza flights are back. Great summer drinks as well. And heck, if you are staying home, check out their game day deals and order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, Mike, we've been talking a lot of Jets right now. It still is bizarre to me that the World Junior Hockey Championships are dropping the puck right now in Edmonton. I'm just looking at TSN right now. It's a 2-2 game between Czechia and Slovakia. I was expecting this to be a weird tournament, really, since the day they decided to try to salvage what they could out of the event and get the money of it being in Canada, even in August. But it's taken on a whole nother level with what's happened and the revelations regarding Hockey Canada's handling of some pretty serious incidents over the past 20 years. And I don't know about you, but looking at what looks like almost an empty rink with no rink board advertising, you wonder at what point, if the IIHF and Hockey Canada knew the way this event was going to go off, if they really would have gone through with it in the first place.
Is that a picture from the 2022 hub? From the bubble? Kind of looks like it.
I was talking to Tom Gazzola today off air, and he said, I'll tell you, this has a real bubble feel to it. And that's not a good thing when you're open for business and expecting fans to fill the building.
I mean, I think there's a couple things going on here. Probably selling tickets at premium prices, which they're doing, by the way, for games not involving Canada, just asinine. Like, who's paying $50-$60 a ticket to go on a beautiful August afternoon to go watch, Czechia and Slovakia play like a preliminary round
The
game?
answer to that is very few.
Right. I think we have our answer. You're right. You're looking at who's willing to pay that. And then, so in terms of just selling to kind of the mass public for games not involving Canada, that was going to be tough to begin with. But of course, the fact that of Hockey Canada's complete mishandling of, various sexual abuse cases, what's been revealed before the parliamentary committee in Ottawa about the way they've not only mishandled, but then responded to some of the criticism, and advertisers pulling out major sponsors. Like, there's a toxicity surrounding Hockey Canada that I think even to sell to like corporate partners and, various businesses right now, like they'll put their money elsewhere. And, to me, I think a lot of this was probably already predetermined for this World Junior. We may see things get even more grim in terms of sales and advertising, things like that, when it comes to, the regularly scheduled World Juniors that maybe didn't have a lot of things already pre-sold prior to the scandals kind of bursting onto the public scene. So, I guess I'm not feeling sorry for Hockey Canada, not one bit. I kind of feel sorry, I guess, for the young players who they don't have anything to do with this. And this is probably not the environment, and not the tournament that they maybe thought they were getting into. But in terms of the leadership of Hockey Canada, like, you kind of reap what you sow, Huss. And I think in some ways we're going to start to see them have to pay the piper here. And frankly, it's about time.
Well, and what's scary is that, Hockey Canada isn't just the national men's team and the national junior team. This is, the organization that runs the sport at every level, at grassroots level, sledge hockey, our incredibly successful women's program. All of that will be affected if the funding is cut off. And, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, financially, having worked there, knowing how big of a money machine Hockey Canada has been. But that's on the back of their premier sponsors.
Right.
So Tim Hortons, you go down the list, all of them, listen, their checks cleared. Hockey Canada's got the money, and they've still said, we don't want to be front and center at this event right now. And the other major partner of Hockey Canada is, of course, TSN. And listen, I haven't watched any of this game tonight. Tomorrow, Canada will play Latvia to get things going. And I am going to be so interested to see how TSN handles the Canada games. Bob McKenzie's there. Craig Button's there. They're going to do their best to put on the regular World Junior programming, which a lot of hockey fans do want to see and learn about the players. But TSN is kind of that partner, and to their credit, they built this event. We talk about the World Juniors because of the work that TSN's done over the last couple decades. How that relationship will be positioned will be maybe one of the most interesting sports media stories we've had in a very long time.
Well, I'll say this, Huss, they sure as hell better not just completely bury their heads in the sand and pretend that what's going on is not happening. Like, I fully expect, and I think people should basically demand that they pay heed to the reality of hockey in this country, and junior hockey especially, and Hockey Canada. If Rick Westhead isn't being brought on as a guest here to talk about some of his findings, if they're not commissioning, panels to have legitimate discussions and not just pay lip service, then I think they've failed, on a significant front here. So I'm fascinated as well to see if they try to just put on a brave face and pretend none of this is happening. I don't think they can do that. I really don't. And I think it was Gordon Miller tweeted the other day, made it sound like they have some plans to that extent. They're not going to run and hide from this, even though they're putting on the broadcast. And I think when I saw Gordon Miller's tweet, it almost sounded like he was personally given the option of whether he wanted to participate in this. And he was explaining why he feels it's important to do that. And it sort of goes to what I said a few minutes ago about, feeling bad for some of these kids. Like they're not part of the issue. Like they didn't do anything wrong. And so the thinking is, well, why punish, them? Why punish the athletes for things that others have done or haven't done? But yeah, I mean, TSN better cover this, in a significant way. And that'll be really interesting to watch. And I'll be curious, frankly, to see what the ratings are for the World Junior. And I'm sure if they're bad, they'll explain them away and say, well, it's summer and people have other things to do. But, again, I think this is it's all starting to catch up to Hockey Canada, and it's deserved. It really is.
Yeah, I know. And someone, I believe Stonewall Davis, said, to be fair, TSN all did much of the reporting on this too. Well, Rick Westhead did, but Rick Westhead is, and maybe this is unfair, but in some ways he's almost an adversary to many of the guys on the hockey beat. Right. I mean, when Rick Westhead starts poking his nose around with the Blackhawks or with Hockey Canada, it puts a lot of the quote-unquote insiders in very difficult positions. And listen, that entire profession, and I won't single anyone out in particular, looked pretty bad, frankly, especially during the entire Blackhawks ordeal. I mean, as if these guys didn't know some of this was happening, and yet it was crickets everywhere, broadcasting, reporting, until essentially everyone in the hockey public was going, where the hell are all these guys that are supposed to know everything that's going on in the business? Why is it Rick Westhead that's doing this all? So, he is a CTV TSN employee, but a very, very different job. And, even to this point, I think these guys read the room and realized that there were some things that they needed to at least boost if they weren't going to go get on a platform and use their own to speak to it. But I mean, Rick's role and then how it is handled by guys that I really like. I mean, Craig Button's one of our favorite dudes, and he's more of a scout guy. He's a little different. But I mean, Bob McKenzie has been so inside with Hockey Canada for so long. He's on the panel right now. I've checked his Twitter feed a bunch. It's all pimping margaritas. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of other things right now. And you wonder at some point, how that is going to be included into the broadcast, because it's the elephant in the room that nobody really can or should ignore.
For sure. And I think people like that have enormous platforms that can do some real good with those platforms, a lot of them have been all too silent on this. And, maybe there's been some retweets here and there, but in terms of them actually sinking their teeth and putting their resources into discovering what went wrong and amplifying it, there hasn't been a whole lot of that. And I think some of that, Huss, is a case of they don't want to bite the hand that's kind of fed them for a long time and fed them really well. And so, Rick Westhead, he's a trailblazer, and Katie Strang has done some terrific work, of course, as well. Unfortunately, they've been few and far between, and it shouldn't just be one or two. And you'd like to think that the snowball effect that we're seeing here on a lot of these cases coming to light, that there'd be a similar journalistic snowball effect with other prominent hockey writers getting in on this. We just haven't seen a whole lot of that to date. And, I think in terms of the World Juniors and Hockey Canada, and Huss, you probably know this as well as anybody, but I think for a long time, there's been this thought, this is before all the scandal came to light, that they got a little too big for their britches, right? That they're
100%.
Yeah. And I mean, that the World Juniors, like they took what it was, and obviously it grew and grew and grew, but
go back to 1999 in Winnipeg. I mean, that event was so well done, so well attended. And at that point, they said, you know what? Okay, we've outgrown the Winnipegs. We're putting this in Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver. We're charging NHL prices and putting in NHL buildings because we can. And listen, I mean, that was even during the time where I was working for Hockey Canada, albeit on the women's side, is something I'm immensely proud of. And I appreciated the opportunities that I was given, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that I felt that there was a level of hubris amongst that organization that really kind of felt like they could do no wrong. And, finally we saw a bit of a reckoning with some empty seats in some of these buildings. I mean, they pushed it as far as they can. That's what professional teams do all the time. We're seeing it happen here in Winnipeg. I mean, in markets around Hockey Canada, it happened first just because of how much they pushed that envelope.
Right.
And they didn't think it would ever come back to haunt them.
No, there's an arrogance for sure. And a lot of people eating humble pie these days, no doubt. And, I think you could go down the list and find all kinds of things that Hockey Canada has done wrong. But of course, all the bad, maybe business decisions that they've made are trumped by the horrific kind of moral and ethical mistakes, egregious mistakes in some cases that were made. And there's a reckoning happening for sure. Change is happening. It's probably not happening quick enough. And at this point, maybe not as sweeping as some would like, but how this World Junior and then the upcoming one as well plays out, that may be added to the long list of Hockey Canada blunders here and miscalculations. But
hey, let me ask you this just to finish this off, because Andrea Skinner has been named the interim chair of the board of directors,
right.
Which is an important first step. But I mean, when you look at this, Mike, I mean, what is the best case scenario moving forward to minimize the damage, to get the game back going in the right direction, to learn, make changes, and move forward? I'll be honest, the first name that comes to my mind happens to be working for the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, but it's Hayley Wickenheiser.
Yeah.
I mean, having some key influential champion players from the women's side, I think would go very well to do it. I don't think there's any doubt that there'll be far more female involvement in the board and things going forward. But big picture, when you look at this, if you were giving suggestions, how do they build and move on from this tournament right now going into next hockey season and implement things to help the game get to where it needs to be?
Well, and I think inclusion of some prominent voices, and not just as a PR move. I interviewed Greg Gilhooly a couple of weeks ago, and he said he had an interesting line where he said, they probably think they can just say Sheldon Kennedy's name 3 times like Beetlejuice, and it'll make everything go away. And Greg, who knows Sheldon really well, and of course both victims of Graham James, said a guy like Sheldon Kennedy is long past the patience where you can just use his good name to kind of fix your broken system and your reputation. And so I think people like Greg Gilhooly, like Sheldon Kennedy, people who've lived it, who've been involved in hockey and certainly seen the dark side of it, their voices need to be heard. And that's why I really question how serious Hockey Canada is about a lot of this. I mean, it was 2 weeks ago I interviewed Greg, and he said Hockey Canada still won't even return his calls. Like, they don't want to hear from him because they don't like what he has to say. Well, you know what? Maybe if you have listened to people like him along the way here, you wouldn't be in the giant self-inflicted hole that you've created for yourself. But again, it just speaks to that hubris, that arrogance, that ego that has often gotten in their own way. So for sure, today's announcement, I think, is a positive step, but there's got to be more. And I think some of these guys who've at this point refused to admit any wrongdoing, refused to step down, like, there needs to be a full-scale house cleaning, I think. That even if it's just the optics, if nothing else, just for the optics that you've cleaned house, you're starting fresh. And I think who you bring in is ultra important. You better have people who have lived kind of the experience, who are connected to the community, and who aren't just going to be seen as yes men, the old boys club, that it will just be business as usual. So to me, I mean, and the grassroots, like, we're seeing a lot of various hockey associations. Hockey Manitoba now has come out in defense of Hockey Canada. Like, I think this goes beyond just Hockey Canada. We need to see this happen at the grassroots level, so there isn't this belief that it's just everybody covering for everybody, which unfortunately I think has been the case for far too long.
Yeah, no doubt. Mike McIntyre with us from the Winnipeg Free Press. Hey, just quickly before we go, and this has been a great chat, we're going to be talking about a 10-0 football team heading into their bye week on Friday.
I think we are, and we're going to be talking about a very tired team that should get every minute of their bye, to go do as they please, to put their feet up, to rest and relax, because this Bomber team, I don't think we can come up with enough words to describe what Mike O'Shea and company have done with this group. Like, they have every excuse in the book to have had a poor performance or two here and a misstep or a blunder along the way. And all they keep doing is winning and making it look relatively easy. It is truly remarkable, the culture that they've built around this team. It's the culture that every sports team in every sports league talks about trying to get to, and very few actually ever accomplish. But the Bombers have it. They have a group that just will not take the foot off the gas. And so I see no reason, Huss, that this Thursday will be any different than last week. That, again, yeah, they're tired. They're a bit banged up, although they're getting healthier. But I just see no reason to ever count these Bombers out. And maybe the only thing that can stop the Bombers right now is rest. Like, I guess we'll see how they come out of the buys that they have coming up. But this is a team that has been going basically nonstop since camp. They're about to get a whole bunch of stops now built in over the next couple months on the road to the Grey Cup. And I guess the only concern I'd have is how do they navigate that? I mean, is that going to slow them down in any way? Normally, I'd say some rest and recovery is not a bad thing, but when things have been going so well, you hope that it's not that ultimately kind of derails you.
Well, the fact of the matter is, I mean, they've got 9 wins, potentially 10 going in before they've even had a bye, and Mike O'Shea's been here before. This team has been here before. I mean, they'll be fully focused on clinching that West final. I don't think anyone's beaten the Winnipeg Blue Bombers outdoors in Winnipeg at IG Field in November. Hey, you know what? I was going to break, but I may as well hit this you. I mean, you've made some big changes in life. You're looking amazing. You lost all that weight. And this kind of speaks to the connection between the Bombers, some of the key, most important players, and the fan base. I was talking to Rian Marcoux over at the Bomber office about a couple things for the show and the upcoming game. Yeah. And I was asking about Willie Jefferson and this Challenge for Life. I'm not sure whether you've seen this, but the Challenge for Life is coming up. And Willie, this was something that was totally put forward by him, by the player. He wanted to participate in the Challenge for Life, which is a Cancer Care Manitoba fundraiser, and wanted to get fans involved. And the challenge is to complete 20 kilometers or 200 non-continuous minutes of exercise between the 4th and the 14th. So on the 14th at 10 a.m., everyone's going to come to the stadium to finish the last leg together. Of course, Willie will be there hosting. They're going to set up circuit-style stations that people can rotate through, or they can walk laps around the field. My Gym St. Vital is also going to have a kids area set up. We'll get the link out so people can either donate or start it on. But I was just so impressed by this, and even more so when I found out that this was actually initiated by the player. And these are sort of things go a long way, even if you're not a perfect undefeated football team in the middle of, what could be a dynasty. Right. But I mean, there's a lot of other teams, you know who I'm talking about, that I'm sure would kill to have a player as noteworthy as Willie Jefferson start and go forward with something that they not only put their name behind, but really connect with the fans to get people involved. And I wanted to bring it up because hopefully a number of Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners will get involved. I know Wheeler did that ride inside that was a little while ago, but I mean, listen, and Blake's done a lot of cool things in the community. But and part of that is being the captain. This sounds like something in season that Willie's jumped on. And it's just a really cool thing. It speaks very highly of the player, of the team, the community. And I think that Winnipeg fans, are going to get involved in this at way higher numbers than if Willie Jefferson decided that this wasn't something that he was going to put his name behind or really get involved in.
Well, and I think it speaks sort of more broadly to what the Bombers have been able to do and why they've been so successful. They haven't just built this team with really good football players. They've built the room with really good human beings, with good people who hold each other accountable, who have a lot of fun, who get along great, who are in it kind of for each other, who have each other's backs, and who love this community, and the community loves them back. And, you know, again, when we think about some of the dark days of the Bombers and the disconnect, I think that was happening on and off the field here, to get where they now are, and to have people like Willie Jefferson and Adam Bighill and that leading the way, you know, just speaks to the job that everyone in this organization, kind of top to bottom, has done. And as for the challenge, Huss, I mean, I'll say this. I participated in the 5K in the Manitoba Marathon back in June on Father's Day. There's nothing like the rush of kind of running into that stadium. And I only did the 3 miles. Like, it's not like I had run the full marathon or even the half. But I'll tell you, it's one of the coolest things, one of the best feelings just for an average Joe. So for folks who, you know, want to get in on this, and like you said, the final leg and at the stadium, and like, that's an experience that you'll remember forever. And I can't kind of encourage it enough to get involved.
Yeah, if you're listening on the podcast, get online. You can just Google search Challenge for Life Cancer Care Manitoba. I'm sure there's some links from the Bombers site. And if you're with us on YouTube, check out the link that Remis has up in the chat. Mike, awesome chat. Thanks so much for taking a bit of extra time. Lots to get to today. Have a good one. Enjoy the game on the weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
You bet, Huss. Have a great week. Take care.
Appreciate it. There's Mike McIntyre. Man, we hit a lot with Mike today. We're going to get Remis back in here. Do want to thank our friends at Breezy Bend Country Club, doing a bit of a media event for the upcoming Canadian Mid-Am and Senior Women's, coming to Breezy at the end of the month. Hopefully going to get out there on Monday and maybe do the show from there if everything works out. Of course, if you're thinking about a great home for your family, for your golfing future, talk to Corey Johnson over at Breezy about getting on the waiting list for next year. And you can find out everything that Breezy has waiting for you and your family online at breezybend.ca. You know what goes great with the round at Breezy, or a football game on Thursday? How about Canadian Club, or the new drink of the summer, the ready-to-drink Canadian Club and Ginger Ale? It is, of course, available at your favorite beer store or liquor store, but it's also available at the game. I know there'll be a few CC and Gingers enjoying at the Princess Auto tailgate party before the game, and certainly in at IG Field, along with the rest of the Beam Suntory and Canadian Club products. Again, grab the RTD, CC and Ginger, at your local beer store today. All right, we do have to get to our Coolbet picks for tonight, as well as our horse picks, but let's get Michael Remis back in here. Remo, great stuff with Mike McIntyre. We sure did hit a lot of topics there with Mike, and I was particularly interested in his take on the Hockey Canada stories. He's been all over it, and I don't know what it's going to look like tomorrow when Canada plays Latvia, but I can tell you right now, it's not going to feel like a normal World Junior here in Canada.
Yeah, well, it's summer. First of all, I mean, I'm not sure how many people want to go inside and watch some summer hockey, especially the game that's going on when it's not Canada. We'll see what it's like when it's Canada. But yeah, of course, a lot going on with Hockey Canada with the sexual assault allegations, and it does look weird without the boards. And we'll see how many people want to show up, see how many people want to wave the flag. We are, looking at the tweets. What Scott Wheeler, I had the one earlier, who had one from the game, and I think it was Stephen Ellis from the Hockey News saying it's a lot of the players were actually from other teams or scouts, so different. I find it interesting that there's also going to be another world, the regularly scheduled World Junior is going to be in December. So interesting, definitely interesting times here. It does give you a lot of memories of the bubble as much as we want to forget the bubble.
No, exactly that. All right, let's get to the Coolbet lines here. Hey, our friends at Coolbet actually have a special prop bet for tonight's Jays game, and I am all over it. It's a Coolbet exclusive. Jays to win over the Orioles, and Alek Manoah over 5.5 strikeouts. He's averaged over a strikeout an inning in 4 career starts against the Orioles, and he's gone 6+ innings in 3 of 4. So there you have it, the exclusive. Plus 250, Jays to win, and Manoah over 5.5 strikeouts. As far as everything else happening at Coolbet, we've got some great tennis action going on at the National Bank Open. All the odds are there for you. We've got World Junior odds. that are up right now. A little later on tonight, it's Finland, Latvia, Germany, and the United States. And tomorrow, Switzerland and Sweden. I'm sure Canada will be a heavy favorite in their first game of the tournament, which is tomorrow against the Latvians, 5 p.m. start. And of course, CFL lines for the weekend. Not much change from yesterday. Bombers still 12-point favorites. Ticats opened up as 1-point favorites. It's now 1.5. BC was a half-point favorite. BC's now favored by 1.5. And Saskatchewan still 5-point favorites on the road against the Elks in the late game on Saturday night. If you've never played at Coolbet before, use the promo code WST on your first deposit. Give you a 100% bonus up to $200 at Coolbet Canada for using the promo code WST. Remo, we actually hit a couple winners last night at the track. Our boy King Wit coming through. Or no, Wit's Coco.
Wit's Coco, and we had talked about, we've been following the horse racing scene here. Everyone knows a lot of people pissed off at Wit's Coco, at least the jockey, for not trying to win when he had a comfortable lead. We talked about Darren Dunn a couple weeks ago. Well, he was back in action yesterday, and both of us bet on Wit's Coco, and he won. So, won that one. Didn't win that other one where he, stopped running in the middle of it.
I'm always on the Wit horses, and actually that's a nice transition into the picks for tonight. Again, 7:30 post time for race number 1 out of Assiniboia Downs. Okay, where are we starting? Race 2. We've got a 2-6 Quinella, Fat and Bitter, one of my favorite named horses, along with Sky View. $3 Quinella on that. Race number 3. Another $3 Quinella. I'm a sucker for the Wit horses, so I'm going with both of them in this one. The two favorites, King Wit and Wit America, number 2 and number 6. Race number 4, we're going a $3 bet on number 4 to win. That is Kate's Princess. Wait a second. I thought I was going on a lot of spunk. $3 win number 1. Yes, a lot of spunk. Horse number 1 in race 4. In race number 5, we've got $3 to win on number 6. And that is out on Saturday. Race number 6, we're going with the $2 to win on horse number 6. That is
Hot Linda.
Yes, Hot Linda. Love that name. Hot Linda's getting it. And then the final
Hot Linda's
selection.
getting it, is what you
Sorry,
just said.
that sounded, it's not what I intended to say, but getting the win. Hot Linda getting the win, and I will be on Hot Linda. Sorry, I will be on Hot Linda.
Betting, way
betting on Hot Linda. This is just getting worse. Final bet. Final bet. Race 7. We're going to Triactor Box with our boy Drizzy.
Not Freudian slip.
Contraband and Dan's a Rebel 258. There are my picks for tonight after a nice plus $20 evening last night. Where are you going?
All right, all over Hot Linda. I don't know about you. Hot Linda's getting it. Who am I taking? Who am I taking? Oh man, how could I not?
Hot Linda's taken.
Gonna have to get on top of Hot Linda here. No, I'm taking. Let me go through my picks. Race 3, I got a 2-6 Quinella. That's King Wit, and Wit America. How do you not take
Okay,
those?
we both are on that. Let's do it. Double dosage of the Wit horses. I always love them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Love Chat just showed up. I had to kick him out.
Yeah, she heard us talking about Hot Linda.
Exactly. Okay, was race 4. I got a 1-4 Quinella, a lot of spunk, and Kate's Princess. And I'm on race 5. I'm taking. Oh yeah, really slow to win. Really slow. That's an automatic bet. When I said really slow was on the card. And race 7, I'm on Drizzy to win. Drizzy. I didn't take Hot Linda. You can
You know
can
what?
take Hotlanda.
That was in number 7. But there actually we could have common wins, and I know we're both on the Whit horses in there. Anyways, if you are able to get out to the track, it'll be another great night to watch the live racing. But if you do want to make a few wagers at home, use HPIBet.com. And right where the same site that we're working on, you can bet at Assiniboia Downs as well as tracks all around the world. And you can watch the games, watch the races, I should say, with Stretch and Kirk at the Assiniboia Downs YouTube page. Hot Linda, the entire Hot Linda ordeal has completely derailed the chat. I knew that would happen the minute I started fumbling all over my simple wager for.
You're just
for
talking
Hot
about who
Linda.
you're betting, and because
Exactly.
I guess it's the horse named Hotlanda, we're having some fun. I mean, this is why you tune in to the end. This is the best part of the show, and when I
Hot
come back
Linda
on,
getting a marble for sure.
Hotlanda, we'll see if Hotlanda wins tonight. You win some money for sure. I do want to say we're closing in on 8K subs, so come on, hit the thumbs up, hit the red subscribe. Can we get to 200 likes on this show? I don't know. And then also in our description, we got the Instagram and TikTok. Follow us on those. I've been posting some show highlights from the summer. We gotta make some content, Huss. It's that
Beautiful.
slow time of year.
Well, exactly. But thanks to everyone that joined us. And yeah, if you haven't already, do us a favor, hit that red subscribe button on YouTube. We're very close to 8,000. Looking forward to breaking that milestone. And if you have the opportunity to tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk and how they can find us each and every day live on YouTube at 1 p.m. and in their podcast feed later on the afternoon, we greatly appreciate it. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to the Turtle Man, Milt Stegall, for jumping on, and a great extended convo with Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. And thanks to everyone for making us a part of your day. Big show tomorrow. Mason Appleton of the Winnipeg Jets, Stanley Bryant to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and Murat Atesh of the Athletic. Looking forward to it. We'll see you then on WST. Have a great night, and thanks for watching.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.